Hi, everyone. Welcome to the September 2023 meeting of the Conservation Commission. The first order of business is approval of the August meeting minutes. Does anyone have any edits to make? Yeah, Abby.
I have a question. On top of page 3, when we were doing the, not the power plant, but the other one, sorry. It talked about a vote, and I voted no on the project, but apparently on the CUP, there was the fill and dredge, and that was second, and then the CUP, 67 Burgess Court.
Okay.
At the bottom, the description, it said that Lynn and Brian had recused themselves and that the vote was a unanimous 5-0. But I don't remember voting in favor of it at that point and then voting against it in the fill and dredge section. And I don't remember those guys recusing themselves, and they didn't recuse themselves from the fill and dredge. So I was like, so I'm wondering if there was a cut and paste that went into the wrong place.
Yeah, I haven't recused myself from anything so far.
Yeah. And I was like, why would they recuse themselves from one half of the issue and not the other? So anyway, that, and I thought I voted against it on both, and it was a 7-1 or 6-1.
Yeah, we might have gotten that wrong in the.
So anyway, that was my only edit. Do you have?
I don't have any.
Okay.
Any other edits? I wasn't there, so I don't have any edits. Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for the last meeting with the recommended changes.
Second? Any discussion? No? Ready to vote? All in favor? And I'm going to recuse myself. Okay. Moving on to the next order of business, the wetland conditional use permit applications, new business. The first one on the agenda is 90 FW Hartford Drive. Is anyone here to speak to that application?
Excuse me,
Come up to the
before we
microphone.
start,
Yeah.
I'd like to recuse myself because I know one of the owners, so
Okay.
I'll just sit
For
down
the
this
90
one.
or
90 and 80.
Okay.
They're legal.
if you would just state your name for the record?
Yes, Ash Chicory, 90 FW Hartford Drive.
Thank you.
So that means that both Brian and Abby will be voting this time because he recused himself.
Yeah, so that's true. So for this application, 90 FW, and we'll revisit it for 80, both you guys are voting. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, so I'm here today just to basically explain the tree on my property. So I had the chance to talk to Kate when she came to my house, and she showed me one of the website that you use to look at the delineation of the lines. So eye-opening, but that's what I used right there. So what I did was, so those trees that you see, one of them is a shed, and the shed itself came with the house when I bought it back in 2015. So the trees, I took them because with time, a lot of these trees are just, the roots show, they are leaning, some of them were peeling. So starting from the side, those trees, they were like huge pine. They started rotting out to the point where they become top heavy, and they were massive, like probably like 80, easy, huge. And very close to the house and my neighbor's house as well. And, as a homeowner and as a dad, same thing. I'm like, okay, if that tree falls, and I'm an anxious person by nature, I'm like, if that tree falls, any of these trees fall, they hit my neighbor's house right there. So I did that because they were also in bad shape. A lot of them have just rotted out. And the cluster you see there, I have a better picture, but on a USB stick. One of them, the tree had like a crevice in it as well, so one of the secondary one. So, and it was basically leaning on this side. So it goes to my neighbor Julian's house, that close. So I took the measures here. Over there's also, on the side, there's a tree that was already taken by the previous owner. I have it there as well. He said that fell on on a vegetable bed he had back then. So he took this out, but I added it there. So that's for the side. So next to the shed, there was a beech tree, where the beech trees, there were big branches, like huge branches. One of them fell on that shed, it rotted out, and then the other one had a crack, so you could actually properly see the crack all the way down. So I took this out as well, because then it had some mold, and I don't know what you would call it, but it was a lot of just black and green on it, but it was just cracking. So it would have split and fallen this way. So because we out there, we play a lot, our little kids, we play a lot there, we go in the back. I took that as well. And then moving along there, so the cluster that you see at the underside, I did measurements about like 38, 40 feet from the wetlands line. And the last one, actually, I have an updated measure of it. The last one on the back there, that's about 8 to 9 from the line. So moving to the left on the picture, the trees that you see, one of them it grew and then became 2 and then had a hole. So this leaned on this one. So I took this one out as well. And then lastly, this one, the last one, that's about 38, 40 feet from that line going this way, the last one. There was a tree before that came down. If you were there, you probably saw the roots. There was like a big root over there. That tree that came down took this one, the one before it, and this one. It just went right on it. So I took it out as well. So safety reason. My neighbor has a very expensive playset on this side, and their house on this side is way closer than mine. So those big trees, they go. The other reason is there was a lot of, I found out there was like burning bush around it and a buckthorn. So it was such a canopy that it just like, I think it suffocated the whole section itself, where, I guess I took other pictures, but if you were there, you saw some of the trees that were still protruding out, rotten out, and there was still a lot of cleaning that had to be done because it fell over time. One of the things we want to clean that up is because in the winter, for example, years ago, we used to be able to snowshoe right through, because if you look at the shed, behind the shed, I still own 100 feet all the way back. We used to be able to go. It was bushy, but we would go. In the past 2 or 3 years, because it became so clustered with branches, trees, and this burning bush, we couldn't even go back. I actually went back once with a neighbor. He sprained his ankle because of a lot of stuff that was just there. So I took those burning bush, they grow really fast, so I cut it down, but it came back within a year and a half or so. And then buckthorn, those things wrap around the tree. So when I was taking them out, I saw that there were other stumps there. So I remember the owner, previous owner, Scott, when I was talking to him when I bought the house, he said he took some down because they came down, right? And then point of reference for me, if you look at my neighbor 2 houses down, that was my reference, because his lawn goes about 80 feet past mine. So going, I remember Scott telling me, he said, oh, we have the wetlands, it's way back there, that's why he was able to do that lawn. So that was always my reference, not just me, but many other people, of the wetlands being back there. So even the water line, if we go, you have to walk probably like 40, 50 feet to see some things if it accumulates. So my take on that is probably, the line is probably a bit further out, but I don't know. But that was my gauge. My neighbor at, I believe, 70, in terms of why, we all thought, okay, we're fine. But looking at the plan, I'm like, okay, so we are a lot in the buffer, but what can I do, as a homeowner to have what I call reasonable enjoyment while being able to just, go through, and kids don't get branches, or, one of my friends called one of the tree a widowmaker, is what he called it. So so that's why I'm here, just basically to get, what I want to do is, part of my plan is to, I'm not building on it, I just want to get that whole mess cleaned up, because there's so many stuff. Like I say, I have other pictures I have on a USB stick that I took, but they are still, I'm hoping I could save 2 of the trees. They're nice trees, but they're already rotten out. I mean, if you need, I could send other pictures as well. But what I want to do is basically clean that area so we could walk there, and eventually basically just put some fill in there and just put like, blueberry bushes and stuff like that. But that's why I'm here. And I think part of your packet, you mentioned the shed. So I bought the house in 2015, the shed came with it. So not my favorite type of shed, but it's something I can use. But I'm not sure if there was any permit for this before 2015. So again, I'm here. The logic is the safety issue those three posed for family, myself, and my neighbors, and then cleaning up the area as well, because it's still a mess right now. So
Thank you for that. We'll now take questions, and then we'll
Sure.
see what you have to say. Go ahead, Allison.
Are you employed?
yes,
And what is your job, if you don't mind me
I'm an
asking?
auditor. I audit hospitals for
Okay,
compliance.
so you have had no training as an arborist?
No.
Well, it's very difficult for someone without any training to look at a tree just because it looks a certain way and decide that it needs to come out.
Okay.
So really, a licensed arborist is the one that evaluates a tree, particularly in a wetland buffer, to decide whether it's a dangerous tree or not.
Okay.
Okay? And we have some images that seem to indicate that if that shed did come with the property, it wasn't located on that spot. But at any rate, what we think is that you really need to have a wetland delineation, and that you need to work with the wetland scientist to see how you're going to make amends for what happened here.
Okay. Once you're done, I have questions on that. If anyone knows, was the Woodlands always had wetlands? Was it built in the wetlands? Do you know?
It was, the houses were built out of the wetland, but in the buffer.
In the buffer?
Yes, a lot of the houses are actually in the buffer. And if you look at the line that's drawn there,
Right.
that is not as accurate as it could be. Now, you may not have done as much damage as it seems, according to what our documents say,
Yep.
if you can get a wetland delineation and it says that there was less damage done.
Right.
But we have a 25-foot no-cut buffer. And the other thing is that when you look, it doesn't have to have standing water in order to be a wetland.
Right.
Okay? It's got to do with the soils and the plants that are
Yep,
there.
I understand that, yep.
So that's why you need to have a wetland scientist come out and delineate your property to see where the wetland buffer is and where the wetland actually starts.
So-
And then you need to make some sort of a reparation for what was done.
Okay. Question I have is, when this was, how old is this map for the wetlands, the boundaries? Because if you mentioned delineation, are you not sure the line is there? Or
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that these are as accurate as we could be with doing a massive drawing regarding where the wetlands are. And the wetlands were originally delineated by the association that put in the homes.
Right.
But if you translate that to the map, it may not be exactly accurate. So that's why I'm saying, go out, have it redone, see what it is.
Right, okay. Now, is that something the city would do because it's your purview?
It's something that you would do as the homeowner. You need to have that done on your property.
But the jurisdiction is yours, right?
So the city has a citywide wetland delineation map that
Right.
was last done in 2003 that usually if we have smaller parcels like homeowners coming in that might not be able to use a wetland scientist or afford a wetland scientist and we feel that the map is accurate, we let them use our own citywide wetland delineation. But in recent years, we feel that some spots of it have not been as true because wetlands have changed over the last 20 years, so we're working on a citywide update.
Right.
But in this case, and in the case of a lot of applicants, they feel that the wetland has changed. And when we were out walking on Julian's property, we noticed that it did look like it might be a little bit off, so it might be in your best interest to hire a wetland scientist, unless you would like to continue using the citywide map.
And based on that, so if I understand well, is it like any time you operate within a wetland or a buffer, you need a permit? Anytime, like anything you do, any tree or anything, right?
Any ground disturbance.
Any
correct.
ground disturbance. So, so in the woodlands where I am, where a lot of the houses are in the buffers, anyone who does tree work will need to talk to the conservation board and get a permit
Correct.
If they're within the
If
wetland
it's in
buffer.
the wetland buffer.
if it's in the buffer. Okay, that's good. Because I have spoken to some people who said, they did talk, but they took some trees. But again, I think the education is key, right? A lot of us don't know, like myself. But I think, I think Kate said there would be like a citywide education on the wetlands and uses. I think that's what's missing. Our neighborhood has changed a lot. So I was thinking that, on our end, we have a grandfather reasonable use of land. But, if people don't know, they don't know. That's the problem. So,
In order to take advantage of any kind of grandfathering, you would have to come in front of us,
right.
because we know what's reasonable and what's not.
So,
And the Woodlands Association
Right.
did have all of that in a charter when that whole area was developed. And so I don't know if the committee changes, and so the people that are there are not as familiar with what's going on.
I think that's the thing. I don't think there's more familiarity with it. So in terms of, if, like you said, if I believe there's something that's not safe, I have to call an arborist.
Correct. To have it verified.
Okay.
If it's in the wetland buffer.
If it's in a buffer. Okay, so no owner can take an action without consulting an arborist if it's in a buffer.
Correct.
What if the tree falls? That's different, right?
It's already down.
Call the city,
Yep.
tell them that there's a tree that's fallen and you need to take it out.
Yep, usually in those cases, a lot of residents that know they're in the buffer or in the wetland and have a tree that's fallen will call and we can go out and walk the site with you, or have an arborist from the city come out with us just to deem if it's safe or not. And usually we'll have a plan of what to do with the tree. And if
Right.
it's sort of already in the wetland, in the resource, sometimes it's best to just leave it as is for habitat. But if it's a safety issue or if really it's in someone's yard, then that might be a different
So,
plan.
so what about the trees that were taken by the previous owner already, were around this burning bush? The same thing, I'm on the hook for these as well. Like there were like 4 or 5 that were just surrounded by this bush that I took out.
That the previous owner took?
Yes.
I
Because-
don't,
See, it's only when, what I did is I cleaned that area, right? And then we have these trees, the big one that you saw over there that I took, then it kind of opened up because I took all the brush out. But then I saw the other stumps that, Scott told me back then he took out. So am I on the hook for these as well? Or the first step is to just do a delineation first, basically?
I mean, I think the first step is to do a delineation and see, where that line is. And then that determines what is something that we need to respond to and what we do not.
Right. And that applies to, I'm asking questions so I can actually, people I've spoken to actually have started to share the map with them as well. I think one of my neighbor was taking trees, a couple of trees, and I asked him as well. I shared the map with him. So I think he said he spoke to Peter about that as well. So yeah, I think a lot of people who don't know, that would be a first good step as well. So delineation is basically the property owner's responsibility, basically.
Yes.
Okay. Yep, okay. And a permit is required anytime in the buffer,
Conditional use permit.
conditional permit.
Yeah.
Okay. And same thing happen for like if a shed is being put, in the back or anything,
Anything.
anything.
Yeah, so likely, I think with the shed, and you can let me know what you think about it, that a conditional use permit separate would have to be done for the shed, is that?
right, so if you would like to do a shed that's in the buffer, you would need to come in first for a building
Permit, yep.
which you'd get after you go through the Conservation Commission for a wetland conditional use permit, and then the planning board. But anything over 18 inches requires a building permit, so a shed would need that.
Including the fact that it's an after the fact, because the shed's already there.
Yep.
Correct. You definitely need a wetland conditional use permit for that. I'm not sure about after the fact building permits. I'd have to ask the building inspector
Right.
about that.
No, I'm asking this because, like you said, I do have some other trees in the back there that, like I said, I took pictures that are just completely dead as well. So, and they're big. And I think another thing is the delineation first, and then trying to find out. I mean, I don't have to be an arborist to tell you this tree is dead. It's dead. But then, if I need to, I'll just get someone involved as well, and just say, this tree. Because I think in the woodlands, it's not just me. It's like woodlands wise. When I talk to people, there's a lot of people doing that, but probably don't know. So yeah. So that's all I have on my end. And well,
Do we have any more questions?
yeah,
Barbara,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add to what you can and can't do in the buffer is you can't bring in soil either, any kind of fill. without coming for a conditional use
Oh,
permit.
yeah, I understood that. So.
Just want to clarify that.
So the delineation, so once I get the delineation, so I just bring back or just do a working session, how does it work?
So after we're done with questions, I think we'll make a motion likely to postpone, but we'll see, and we'll discuss, and we'll decide kind of what the next step is for you. So we'll get there. Do you have more questions, Barbara?
No, I think that's it.
Anybody else? Questions?
I guess just a question of clarification. Just, it sounds like you're talking about these trees that you see that look dead. Are those trees that are there right now that you're concerned about? Or is
Yes,
this in the-
there's about 4 or 5 of them that, you look at them, they're dead, and some of them are dying, so I probably should have them looked at as well.
So there's additional trees that you want to take down.
Eventually, but not now. But, if I need an arborist to tell me that, I'll just get one. To evaluate
Well, if they're
it.
in the wetland, they don't get cut at all.
Don't get cut at all.
Don't get cut at all if they're
So,
in the
yeah,
wetland.
I think they are, when it veered off from the line, they are still inside the buffer, but they're probably like 10, 15 feet in, so, but yeah, okay, that's good to know.
Also,
Go ahead.
dead trees, they call them snags when they're still standing. They serve a very important ecological component of a good ecosystem. So if you're in a forest and you think, oh, I should cut down the dead trees, no, that's not the good thing. So I understand if they were close enough to your house or whatever, you'd be concerned, but that's part of the reason why nothing gets cut down, because it's.
I wasn't talking about a forest, those are, I always think of reasonable use of property, right? So I always say, okay, it's in my backyard. If it's a danger, if we are hanging out there, if that thing is dead, it might fall. What's the reasonable approach, right? I'm not saying, if I go further out, it's away from everything, it's fair game, right? It falls, they fall all the time. I'm just saying the one that, if we're around there and it falls and cracks someone's, property or something. So that's the one I'm talking
It just,
about.
when I was out there, it didn't seem like there were any trees near the house at all. So
not
I
the-
figured they were probably in the forest area.
Yeah, not the house, but on the tree line right now.
Right,
where you see the
but
tree
that's
line.
important to have the diversity of living.
Oh,
and
I get it.
stands. So,
I'm
just
all
saying.
I'm all about that. It's just, to me, I've always looked at it as a safety condition. So I know.
Right.
And I think that's why you come in front of us for conditional use, and we try to balance
Yep.
our vision of the conservation and the ecological approach versus property use,
Yep.
which,
Yeah, that's
which
fair.
we try to do, equitably.
That's
as
fair.
much as
That's
possible.
fair. Okay. So I'll work with the dealing. I'll wait for your.
Yes, so
stuff.
hold on,
So-
we're not done yet. We're gonna
Yep.
get if there's no other questions, can someone make a motion? Allison?
I'll make a motion that we postpone this application until we get the site delineation and the
Wetland delineation.
wetland delineation and the restoration plan.
A second? Okay, so discussion. So we're gonna discuss, and then we'll make a vote, and then we'll come back to you.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so how do we feel about doing a wetland delineation prior to coming back, and at least a first attempt on a restoration, or do we want the next session to
Well,
be a
I-
work session?
No, I think that if he has a wetland scientist come out and delineate, that he can also work with the wetland scientist to come up with a restoration plan.
Okay,
And should come back to us with that.
okay. What do people feel about that?
I mean, it's also up to the homeowner if he wants to continue to use the existing mapping that we have. I think that would
True.
include more trees
True.
as part of the,
Then
that
he's
were
just
cut.
going to
and-
have to
right.
consult with the wetland scientist to come up
The
with a
plan would still,
restoration plan.
right. So it might come down to how much that costs and what the restoration costs are and all that stuff, but it should be his choice.
Okay, so the motion is postponement to return with a wetland scientist certified delineation map and a restoration plan that you've worked with the wetland scientists to do. Or to use the line that is presented in our maps now.
Right.
And still consult with a wetland scientist to provide a robust
Restoration.
restoration plan that likely, well, we don't know based on where the new line will be, but it'll be based on that line and not a different delineated line.
Right.
If that makes sense.
That makes sense,
Okay,
yeah.
so, good with discussion? Ready to make a vote? All in favor?
Well, I wonder if there's just any more guidance we could offer about what we mean by a restoration plan,
Okay.
like just to kind of set you off on the right track.
Right.
Sure.
Does anybody
Would you
have
like
any-
to start?
Well, I mean, I just think we should just put some bounds on it, right? I mean, so the idea, right, is that from our perspective, that there's been this pretty significant impact to that buffer area, right, which is protecting the wetland. And so the idea is to try to recreate some of those functions that were lost by cutting down all of those trees.
Right.
And, you know, so it's now kind of in your court then to sort of think about how can you do both, right? How can you create something that's going to provide a little bit of that protection for the wetland, but also meets the goals that you have
Right.
for the property and for your use?
Sure.
So, for example, we'd like to see in those restoration plans some indication of what kind of planting you could do that, you know,
Yeah, I did mention some, like, I was looking at more like some native species, like, I was looking at blueberry or even bluebell, so something, ferns or natural, so.
Yeah, so the plan, the map would show what species and where and quantity and just, showing where it would all be spaced out. And
Right.
I'm trying to get to an area of new planting similar to what was removed.
Right.
However, obviously, the function of a large tree cannot be replaced by, a sapling. But trying to keep that in mind, and that's where the wetland scientists can help you too. Do you
Sure.
have anything else to add on that, Allison or Barbara?
Something a little bit tangentially related is the fact that the shed looks very unstable to me, and it looks like a hazard if you're worried about things falling down.
There was a big branch from that beech tree that basically bowed it, so yes, that's how it happened.
The concrete has sharp edges and there were nails coming out, protruding out. So
What concrete?
the blocks that it's sitting on,
Oh,
they're very sharp. Those are very sharp edges, and I was like, oh, he's worried about the roots, but I was like, this is what I would worry about.
well,
So-
that's what happened when the tree fell on it, the big, massive branch just literally fell on it, so it kind of moved it too, so. I had to be out there for like 2 hours, just clean that thing up, so yeah.
May want to cover it with something if you've got kids out there. But
Yep,
Anyway.
oh, definitely.
And if you are going to be coming back for, after the fact, conditional use permit for the shed, potentially thinking about moving it into another location where if you are concerned with trees falling on it, I mean, it should not be that close to the wetland anyways. But anyways, nothing you have to decide on now, just something to
Right,
think
no,
about
the-
when you're thinking about that after
Right.
the fact application.
Yeah, there's no trees that now can damage it, the big one was right there, so that's the one that's gone, so, yeah, I'll
If it can be
think about
moved
that.
somewhere else outside the buffer, just things to think about when you're considering that permit.
So, but if I want, so just last question, if I wanted a shed there, say like a real shed, what's the?
Like a new one, not the one that's currently there.
Yeah, that sits on gravel, basically,
Yep.
not right now doing it, but, just for future use, if I'm thinking I need something, bigger, like, all around neighborhood, the Woodlands, you'll see those big sheds as well. So could that be, worked with, because it would be like a gravel base and stuff like that?
It would be a conditional use permit.
Right.
We'd have to see. It would be based on a lot of different factors, closeness to the wetland, size, what the base is, whether there's a spot for it to go outside the buffer completely or at least further away. It would be based on a lot of
Okay.
those factors.
That's fair.
Okay, any other guidance? I think that was
I
good.
guess I'll just offer too that, because it was, large woody trees that were cut down, to just be thinking about, are there ways to recreate some of that tree habitat, that forested habitat?
Yeah.
And it may not be your priority, I realize, but you can just think about if there's anywhere to recreate some of
Yeah,
that.
I mean, definitely, like I said, that's in my mind as well, just
Okay.
to create that, so.
All right, ready for a vote. So this is a motion to postpone, to come back with a wetland delineation and a restoration plan. All in favor?
Or,
Oh, yeah, oh. Against? Okay.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
I probably should have said postpone to the next meeting.
I think we're okay.
Okay.
Just
Well,
clarify.
I didn't say that. Is it up to him to come back, probably?
I wonder if you can do all that within a month.
Yes, so 2 weeks. Then it's fine, we didn't say the next
Yeah,
meeting.
I don't
Okay.
think it'll be ready enough. in
All
time.
right.
If he does come back, we need to also discuss the fact that extending the grass is not.
Okay, next on the agenda is 80. Mine's blank. Oh, there we go. Is 80 FW Hartford Drive. Is anyone here to speak to that application?
Yes, hello, I am Julian Fry.
Hi.
Hello.
If you'd like to present your project, if you want to call it, or just anything additional you have to add?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, it parallels what you just heard from Ash. You know, my wife and I initially had put this in a total of like 5 pine trees, like Ash said, all 60, 70, 80 feet high. We had put that through our homeowners association. We thought that was, you know, covered us from an environmental standpoint. The desire to do so is we are trying to put up solar panels. We're actually getting the roof done sometime this week, and then trying to put up like 30 panels. So that's where we were coming from. But yeah, I mean, I would echo everything you just heard from Ash in terms of safety. It sounds like we're now at a point where how do you kind of make that buffer better? But it sounds to me like some of the precedent's been set here, and until we really identify where that line is, you know, I'm not sure what we would cover here. I did add in mind, it was after the fact, and for what it's worth, Kate has been outstanding to work with. You know, just kind of high level our thoughts. I obviously won't read it here, but, and again, I think it's gonna come down to where, what the wetland scientist says, the soil scientist says, in terms of where we go from here. But just to give you an understanding of kind of what we're thinking in terms of a restoration plan, this might give a little bit more context to where our head is at. So I would absolutely welcome kind of, you know, are we along the same lines? Anything you could add? You know, I had some questions around the removal of the stumps and, you know, versus kind of like a rain garden installation. Again, all that seems kind of moot to me until we get in that subject matter expert to help provide that guidance. But I kind of put it back to you guys in terms of any additional steps, help, anything in terms of where we are today.
Yeah, questions? Go ahead, Allison.
I like the fact that you referenced the ANSI arborist, how you plant or transplant. That's good. But what we'll need when we have the restoration plan is the number of species, the size of the species, where the species are going to be planted. So we need a little bit more information than that.
Which I would imagine, again, will be derived from where exactly that line is, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Allison. Anything else along those lines?
A lot of the same stuff you heard for the application for 90. I don't know if there's anything additional.
Minus the shed.
Right.
One thing that occurred to me just looking at the site was just, you know, where you've got those really large stumps, right? Even if you do, you know, grind them down and lay down more soil, you're still gonna have a hard time, I think, planting new trees or even new shrubs right close to those old tree stumps. So you may get some professional advice about that. The advice I've heard is that it's really like 6 to 8 feet away from a stump that you would need to plant a new tree. Because like underground, right, there's a crazy amount of roots that are gonna interfere with any new tree roots.
Yeah, and you know, I'm hesitant to even pretend to talk about whatever fill that would be. I don't know if it's a, you know, sand or silty sand or whatever it is. But yes, we understood as your best bet would be to actually remove the stumps altogether versus grinding them out. But I can't pretend to be a subject matter expert on that.
Yeah. I think it could still be difficult because I think below ground there's still going to be some root matter that's left, but just something to think about.
Yeah. Then, yeah, like I said, just in an effort of time, I don't know if I have anything that's, you know, any additional content to provide to you guys at this time.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to postpone for the to the October, I don't know, Conservation Commission meeting? I don't know the date.
I don't know the date either.
So if a month is enough time.
If not,
To have the delineation and the restoration plans.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it certainly would be. I don't know how difficult it is to find the scientist, but I believe that would be enough time for us, yes.
I mean, if not, then we'll just, do we necessarily need to put it on the October?
I don't think so. Just postpone until.
Do you want to just postpone until you've got that, and then we can put you back on the,
No,
would that
I
be
mean,
preferable, or just get it on? And
Yeah, just get
we'll
it on,
postpone
yeah,
If we need to again, okay.
from my preference, yes, please.
Okay, so postpone to the October meeting.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have 810 McGee Drive. Do you have anyone here to speak to that application?
Well, I don't think mine's going to be about trees, so that's good. Lynette Rogers, I'm representing the homeowners, I'm the contractor. So we are just replacing an existing deck in the same location, basically, except for just adding a stair coming down to the backyard within that same footprint and removing on the side of the house. You guys had all been to the property and saw where everything was. And currently the footings are not to code, and so we're digging, to dig down to see how far down they should be, 4 feet down, and they are not. So we did do a test on one of them just to check it, and it wasn't. So we will need to dig new footings back there. There'll be actually less footings right in the area where the main deck is, because we'll be doing a bigger frame, so a bigger frame to hold the load for the deck instead of the 2x8 it is now. So it'd be a 2x12 or 2x10. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but that's pretty much the gist.
Had you considered what you're putting underneath the deck?
As of right now, we weren't putting anything underneath. There's nothing there now. There's just kind of some rocks, some things like that. I did talk to the homeowner about what we had discussed when we were there, and if they wanted to put like gravel or other rocks down there for drainage underneath, that would be a good option to do. And that can be put in after the fact, because basically what would come out of where the footings are currently, we just take out the existing shorter, smaller footings, and they'll be putting easy tubes, so they're not concrete, they're already preformed and they're separated, so you don't have to have heavy equipment back there, so that they can be manually put in, because they come in separate sections. So that's why we do them that way, so one person can handle them instead of having heavy equipment onto a property and destroying the grass as you drive across. So just from a homeowner's perspective, I like that look anyway, so.
Go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, so just, the other recommendation is that you put in wetland buffer markers. I think they would probably go right where the fence is located in the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
So you could potentially mount them right on that fence that exists.
Oh, just while during
Currently.
construction, the buffers?
To say that,
Yeah.
that's
Permanently.
wetland.
Oh, permanent one.
Yeah, they're like little, what are they, like this big, Kate?
Yeah, like 4
Little
inches. I think.
placards?
They're
Oh,
lovely little
placards.
markers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if
That
you've
you
seen
can just
them.
attach to a fence. And
Yeah.
usually, to encourage drainage underneath a deck, putting crushed stone
Yeah.
is a good idea.
That's what I was recommended to them as well, so they would just have to add that to their after the fact.
Any other questions for the applicant? Somebody have a motion?
Okay, no, Brian is not voting.
Oh, who's
then.
voting? Yeah.
Oh, you
It's
are
Stuart
voting on
back.
this one.
I
Okay,
think
so
so.
Abby, you're voting, you are not voting.
It's
Brian.
fine. Yeah.
Okay. Don't mean to be so pointed, but.
I'll
Okay,
make a
Allison.
motion that we recommend approval of 810 McGee Drive with the two stipulations, one being that crushed stone is placed underneath the deck area, and that delineation markers for the buffer are put along the fence in the back.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Go with this second.
any discussion?
I was just going to say, you might want to, I don't, the homeowners aren't here, right?
No, they're not.
just lighting and things like that. And they do have that little area that has lighting out back.
By the fire
Closer
pit.
by the fire pit, that they keep in mind that they are in a natural resource that really gets disturbed by lighting, so.
Oh, but yeah, I think that was an old one that they had said that the previous people had there, so they
Where the
just,
fire
they actually repurposed those rocks and actually used it as that, like a buffer there, because it used to be a fire pit or something. That's what she had said anyway while we were there. I never went back there originally, so my focus was just looking at the deck.
Looks like there still is a fire pit there, I think.
Yeah.
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 A different
And
sort,
chairs.
and chairs, and, yeah, so just to be, and was there string lighting? What kind of lighting?
It was string lighting, yeah.
Okay. I can tell them that.
Yeah, let them know that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and same thing, I didn't ask when we were there what the lighting was on the deck. Did
Yeah,
anyone
that's
notice
mine,
it?
that was my question, right?
Was-
Lighting on the deck? There
Yeah.
is no lighting on the deck.
Is there anything on the house that's,
There's light on the house that lights onto the deck.
Like
Yes.
flood lighting, or?
Like a flood, yeah, it does have, actually, I can look on the picture of it, but there's one by the back door that's right underneath that short section.
Yep.
By the slider, and I think it's just like a regular light, not a floodlight.
yeah, I think just.
Like a sconce.
A
Yeah,
down
just a
lighting
regular,
is-
yeah, it's a regular light.
Okay.
Yeah, just
I'm
in
pretty
front.
sure it's not a floodlight.
Okay, yeah, that would just be something you could talk to the homeowners
Yeah,
about.
I can do
Oh,
that.
and during the site visit, when I said a switchback stair, I misspoke totally. I meant more like an L, where it would come down and then. go
Yeah, I
back,
knew
But
exactly.
over to the right more, so it wouldn't interfere with the door, but anyway.
Yeah.
That's not really important, but I just thought I'd clarify my
Yeah, no
mistake.
problem.
All right, are we ready for a vote?
I have one
Yeah, go
other
ahead.
question. You're probably installing composite decking on this?
We are.
Do you know if those are butted up together, or if there's a gap in between each board?
We use the concealed fastener and actually the tiger claws that maintain that
It's a
gap, that
maintain gap,
quarter-inch
okay.
gap.
Right. Yeah, I was just from a drainage perspective underneath the deck, if you're putting crushed stone down there, if water
Exactly.
can't get to it, it's not as effective, but yeah, the gap is
Then
is
it would
better.
also be impermeable, so that would be a whole nother.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that we
Yeah.
were talking about a
Yeah.
No,
Impervious
we do a
surface.
picture frame deck, and then we use the
Yep.
concealed
Good.
fasteners, and then the tiger claws in the field to maintain that spacing. Yeah.
Great. Anything else? Ready for a vote?
Yep.
All in favor? Against? Okay,
All right.
thank you very much.
Thank you. So planning board would be the next step, Kate?
Correct. I can send you an email with the planning board details and how to apply to that. So you'll have to do another hard copy application. And I'll send you an email for the date of that. It should be next month. I believe they are the second or fourth Thursday, so I'll let you know exactly what date that is.
Okay. Yeah,
and
I know
also-
they have one next.
Yeah,
week.
I think
Yeah.
next week is maybe what theirs is, so maybe it's the third Thursday.
Okay.
And then I'll also let you know about the wetland boundary markers that we were talking about. So those are sold from the Planning and Sustainability Department, so we can
Yeah,
talk
you can
about.
just, send me a little, what it looks like.
Yeah, and I can
I'll
send
send
you a
that to the
photo.
homeowners to be like, this is what you need to have.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right, next on the agenda is 390 FW Hartford Drive. Is there anyone here to speak to that?
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi. Can you, first and last name?
Sarah Cook.
Great, thank you.
So I'm here to propose installing a patio. So as you heard from our neighbors, it is in a buffer zone, which I'm glad I sat through that session. We recently bought the home, and so I wasn't aware of some of those restrictions. So it's good to hear. I think education in general is beneficial for our neighborhood. But there's currently a deck. We had to cut away part of it. There's some structural rot on the beams that run perpendicular to the back of the house that were honestly in pretty dire shape and was pretty concerning. Our kitchen floor was a bit warped from it. And the damage was happening where the deck was attached to the house. And that corner of the deck was, as I mentioned, also held up by a car jack. So the deck was in rough shape, and we needed to access along the house so that we could start that structural repair immediately. And so the house is in the woodlands. It's a very wooded area. I wanted to kind of lean into more of the cottagey woodland feel. So instead of replacing the deck, we wanted to do a patio. You'll see in some of the pictures, I'm proposing having a 1.5-inch kind kind of rain buffer of gravel. There is some of that along the front of the house and the side, so continuing that along the back, and then starting the patio from there. And also, where the generator is in this corner is where the sub pump comes out underneath there. So you'll see on my proposal, basically adding a bit of a rain garden in that section where that sub pump flows out. The house also lacks gutters, and so that's something that we are planning to add gutters and have it also drain into that rain garden. That might take us slightly longer because once, it looks like there might be some rot along the top of that needs to be replaced before we can attach gutters. But you'll see here on the plan, I've got the rain garden kind of off in that right-hand corner of the proposed patio. And then there is a nice kind of flower garden with some native plants that you saw in that picture before of the deck right on the edge. I want to expand that to kind of curve it out into the patio a bit, just to give it more of like a natural organic feel. And then we'd have stairs, the door, it's only like maybe 1.5 feet, but we're going to need 2 stairs. Right now we've got kind of just a temporary step that was originally in the garage that kind of goes down into the patio.
Questions? Go ahead, Allison.
I want to tell you that I appreciate your putting things down on paper. It helps us to visualize what it is that you're proposing. So I think it looks very good.
I had to pull out my old graph paper from my college days to do that, so I'm glad it was appreciated.
Go ahead, Barbara.
I love the drawing, and so I also appreciate the idea of the rain garden. Having worked on rain gardens before, I'm a little concerned that it's very close to the house.
I haven't, and so one of the things, so the prior people had installed almost like a fake little river type feature in the house with I think there is a water feature buried in there somewhere. So there is kind of already a little bit of a natural divot. I was going to kind of push that a little further out from the house and then add plants along the side of it. But if you have recommendations on a specialist, I mean, we just bought the house and there's a lot of repairs, so I'm trying to do a lot of things myself, but I would appreciate any advice.
Is it a foundation or a slab in that area of the house?
Nope. It's a bunch of kind of large river rocks, I would say, that are kind of in that area already, and the sub pump tube is fairly long, so I was going to maybe put a few rocks over it and kind of let it go all the way out and then have the gutter kind of go to that area too. The only thing that's a little challenging is there's the garage door, you see that path. So I do kind of have this narrow space, and I was thinking about maybe just closing off that section of like access to the patio. But yeah, do you have other advice?
So the sump pump you said is coming out there? Is that like a tube? That's
it's
how
just a tube like this that's
a pipe.
probably
So
12 feet long.
2-inch.
So how far is it going from like the house out into the yard? Is that pipe?
About 12 feet right now.
So are you starting the rain garden at 12 feet, or is?
I was gonna start it a little bit closer to the house because I was gonna have the gutters drain out down into it as well. I wasn't gonna cut the hose any shorter. I was gonna let that kind of continue out. But
the gutters you can run out further if you would like them further away from your house. So you could take a gutter line out and come out around where the sump pump comes out, and then it gets it further away from the house.
I think the worry is we just don't want water.
We don't want
back into your basement foundation if you're already also having that rot issue underneath the deck. So just keeping water further away from the house, I think.
Yeah, and that was kind of a little concerning to realize how long that hose was, and I think the prior, it was just under the deck. I don't know where it was draining.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that we have done situations where people had flooding in their basements. As a problem, if you have a sump pump, I'm guessing there must be some water getting in underneath.
I mean, there was, honestly, since they've done a lot of the patchwork along the house, and all the water along there has stopped coming in. The bulkhead desperately needs to be replaced. When we bought the house, there's just a tarp over it, and a closer inspection, they had actually nailed the tarp to the side of the house because the bulkhead was so bad. So we need to replace that. That's next. But right now, the only water getting into the basement is from the bulkhead. So I think we at least stopped that piece.
So you would just want to I would recommend at least 10 feet
10
from
feet?
the basement for both the downspout
and the gutter
pump.
Okay.
So the rain garden would be start 10 feet
Okay.
away.
Yeah.
And then on the city website for the Conservation Commission, we have resources listed there.
Okay.
And I believe Rain Gardens is one of the,
Yeah. Soak up the rain.
yeah.
Okay.
Is on there. And they'll have diagrams, so I don't know if you're familiar with how they look and
Yeah,
what to
yeah.
put. So
Yeah, and I've seen them in like the larger commercial scale where you see now in some of these kind of complexes have those rain gardens.
Well, there's a lot of drainage that's put underneath it to make sure that the plants aren't just sitting in water all the time. So just so that you know that.
Okay, yeah, I'll check out those resources.
And just a stylistic thing, a lot of people come in with square decks and square patios and whatever, rectangular. You seem to really appreciate an organic feel to things, just from your drawing. And you could even oval out like the top left corner of the, you could just smooth that out and make it more round, and then it looks, just from a landscaping thing, it feels more organic and natural than having these geometric shapes carved into the ground. And it's, anyway, so that's nothing you have to,
Yeah.
take into consideration even, but a lot of people don't even think of that.
Yeah,
and
one
it can
thing,
make a
so where
difference.
those, on this deck, so where those stairs come down on the left-hand side, sorry, I'm closer to the mic, on the left-hand side, there is a small slab of concrete. I think it is probably too large for us to try to get up, but it's also a little bit taller than like the level of the patio. And so I was just gonna leave it and just kind of have to step on it because it's maybe like 3 or 4 inches higher than where I'd want the patio to be, which would kind of prevent us from curving that out. I don't know if there's any
I was thinking,
recommendations.
is that the?
I was thinking that,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that
that's-
corner.
Sorry, yeah, I see that, yep,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, okay, well, then it would follow a line and that would make sense.
Okay.
Are you,
Sorry, I didn't
are you
enlarge that
asking if
enough.
you could like cut that down or remove it?
No, because I don't. I'm doing a lot of this myself, and I think I think everyone's just gonna have to step over that piece of concrete slab.
I'm sure you can be really
You
creative.
could
with
mortar
it.
and put a bluestone or some other kind of flat stone on it, just to, one, cover up the concrete if you don't like the look,
Yeah.
and two, make sure it doesn't look like the brick where it would, somebody could like catch their eye and think it's the.
Yeah, and
the
trip over
same
it. Yeah, I
level.
see what you're saying.
Anyway,
It's
sorry.
probably about like 2 feet deep and maybe like 3.5 feet wide. So it's
Okay, so the
Kinda
width
sizable.
is from where your patio is going to be, so it's 3.5 feet
Yep.
wide. I was thinking that you could just put, some large stones on it to make it look a little bit more natural, but it sounds like it's way too wide to do that.
yeah, and I was thinking about maybe putting like plants on it too, just in pots.
Yeah.
But then I lose, like, that's the entry. There's already this pebble path that goes through the yard, and so that's kind of the access point. And I love the native plants that are in that little garden part, so I want to expand that and not disrupt it. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of avoid getting around that. So,
Hey, you work with what you've got.
yeah.
Any other questions?
Just to be clear about this, proposed plan drawing that you have, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. The work to be done really includes just the patio, a slight expansion of the garden bed, just above the patio, and then work on the rain garden.
Yes.
All of that other stuff, so the native ferns, that's all already existing.
Yep.
That's just what the lot looks
Yep,
like. Okay.
and it's not changing at all. So if you look at that one, I forget the one with the image where I just kind of put the blue box on where, yeah, so if you look at that, that's the only section that is being modified,
Yep.
just the blue box.
Yep.
How are you, is machinery having to get back there?
Nothing large because we're going to do it ourselves.
Okay.
We were going to rent the, I don't even know what it's called.
Compactor?
Yes. I think we were going to rent one of those.
Gave it away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was going to dig it out myself. So it's not that big of an area. And like I said, we've got a lot of other repairs on the house we're kind of trying to save money on.
like it.
So
Yeah, it's something, it's definitely something you can do, just whatever you ask.
yeah, it'll take a while.
Watch
but-
your level lines.
Yep.
And,
Yeah. And
oh, yeah.
the actual plan.
Do you have any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. Barbara.
It's actually Allison, but, yeah, so for maintenance, so for both the porous pavers and the rain garden, we usually ask that there's some sort of maintenance plan, just for for you, but also if you were to sell it. So something that would indicate how to take care of the porous pavers and the rain garden.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I'll need to look into it a bit more, because I need to do a little more research on the rain gardens, appropriate maintenance. I imagine removal of any of the invasive species. We've got a lot of that thorn bush in our neighborhood, as Ash was mentioning. But are there other things that immediately come to your mind that are a concern with the maintenance, Allison?
Well, I think that it's not just maintenance, but it's that you have to make sure that you've got enough of the aggregate beneath it in order to allow it to drain through.
Okay.
So if you could have some sort of a, for the planning board anyway, attach something that talks about the maintenance, because after heavy storms and things, or if aggregate gets moved out, or if it gets clogged with dirt, it's not going to function the way it's supposed to. So that's what we want in the maintenance plan, just what you're going to do there, and then how it's actually going to be built, like a cross-section, and you can find these on the internet that shows, here's your porous paver, and these are the layers underneath it that will allow it to drain properly.
Okay.
Okay, so those two pieces of information for the planning board.
Okay.
And I'm sure for the maintenance for the pervious pavers, I'm sure it's probably on their website. I mean, whatever you're using,
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be something that you can take for the maintenance of that. Any other questions? Someone like to make a motion? I can't do it.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the planning board with two stipulations, that they add a cross-section of the porous pavers, how they're going to be applied, and a maintenance plan.
I'll second.
Do we also need the wetland boundary
Yes, wetland boundary markers.
placards? Which, were you listening to the
Yes,
89?
I heard about the placards. I'm okay with the, like, where the line is, because we're clearly in the buffer zone. I'm not trying to do anything in the wetlands, so I'm not going to do the wetland scientist. That's-
Yep, that's fine. Yeah, so your stipulations are the,
3, the maintenance plan, the cross-section of how the porous pavement is going to be laid down, and the wetland boundary markers
okay.
The maintenance plan for the pavers
for the pavers
not the rain garden?
and the rain garden.
Okay, both.
We're trying to get people to start marking the wetlands, so any petition that comes up before us we're now doing this with the markers. If you're wondering, like, why, I'm not doing anything in the wetland. We're asking, going forward, that's going to be sort of the new policy, correct?
Yep. Did we have
Okay.
a,
So that explains why we're asking for the markers.
did we have a second? Did somebody second?
I had a second. I seconded.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'd just like to, Allison already said this, but I appreciate the drawn-out plan. It's, even though it's with just good old, graph paper, it's very helpful.
Yes.
Doesn't need to be anything fancy, so I appreciate that a lot. And the thought that you've put into it in terms of the vegetation and trying to keep it as it is now.
Thanks.
Agreed.
And I like the multicolored vegetation rendition.
Yeah. Pulled out my colored pencils, too.
Okay, ready for a vote? All in favor? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, other business, Paul's Path Trail Clearing Project. We got a letter here from the mayor saying that he supports your project. So I think we just need an official vote now, is that?
Yeah, I think after we discussed after the site walk, I know we sort of did a vote out there, but it's not really our ability to do an official vote out in the field without the full commission with us. So we thought we'd just come together again at our regular meeting and do an official vote. I know not all of us were there, but I think the majority of us were.
If you want to just do like a really quick overview of the project, and then we can discuss it, I guess, one more time, and then go through the vote, if that's all right with you?
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead, if you want to state your name for the record.
My name is Ian Cook. I am a Boy Scout working on the Eagle Project, and I'm working on creating a path. Do you want to?
I think I still have it, yeah.
I'm working on creating about a 1/4 mile path over, not on wetland territory, but over on the new railroad system or the rail trail system. Yeah, that's it. It is off of Ocean Road to the right, and it's connecting with the rail trail. That's where the entrance will be, so you'll be able to access it through the rail trail. And we did be able to fit about 5-6 cars over on the 2 parking points, which will be more parking due to the new expansion of the multi-use rail trail. So that's kind of the overview of the project, and I'll just be cutting down minimal branches, not anything big trees, and just kind of navigating through the land to create a nice walking trail. The trail access point is there. It is a little steep, so I'll be putting about a couple beams to make some steps so it's not as steep of an incline for people that have a hard time getting up those territory or terrain. And Paul's Path, that will be the sign for it. It'll be a gravel, not a concrete base, and of course that's land, so it's just a gravel fill for the post. And the pool study is what kind of inside this project for me, what showed me this land and how I should be able to utilize it. And this was one of the things that was deeply expressed in this pool study, is that it should be used to have a trail on it, and that's what gave me the idea. And of course, with the new trail that they're going to do, they've cut it very wide, and they're putting more parking spots. So for, I know it's flipped, but for 3 and 4 are the 2 places where there can be parking, and my trail is about, I'd say, a couple hundred feet from parking space 4. Yeah. And just cleaning the trail, just removing limbs, removing small shrubs, not anything major, raking debris out of the path and kind of organizing to show it's there, and there won't be any mulch or wood chips. It'll just be just a very lightly impacted use to make a trail. And that is actually, we discussed on that, we're not going to be mulching for that anymore. And then trail maintenance, we'd have to, me and Kate are going to talk about that a little bit before to try to see if we can get an outside party and have the scouts maybe to try to reach in to help maintain the trail. After the project, I'm not supposed to maintain it myself because I'm going to be like hooked on it for the rest of my life. It's just supposed to be one of those things where I give the project away. So that's the quick overview of my project.
Awesome. Anybody have any questions?
If you do a vote,
Yes.
Brian can vote, because I'm going to recuse.
You're going to recuse yourself?
Okay, or, yeah, Brian.
Okay.
Ask a question.
Lynn, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question too. Just I wasn't at the site walk. We had a lot of discussion about bikes. Where did that land? Will bikes be allowed on this trail?
No bikes.
Okay, and that'll just be create a sign or something there.
Well, there's going to be steps too.
There's going to be steps, and
The barrier up. Yeah. Okay.
However,
I don't know. I don't know if that
I've
would
seen
stop
that not
anybody.
stop anybody
Yeah,
on
I don't
bike.
think
It could be an invitation.
Right. Ooh, yeah.
Not let bikes go on because that's a recreational path.
Right.
And it'll be right off the rail trail, but I don't know if, I mean, steps up to it, maybe that'll discourage it, but we can put up signs made from DPW that say environmentally sensitive area, like please keep off in the really sensitive spots.
Okay. And when you guys went out there, did it cross the wetland as we were kind of anticipating that the trail did?
Minimally. There were some
Yeah.
places where it might be a little wet, but it was pretty good. It was around the wetland areas.
And those were already crossings. I mean, they
Yeah.
were pretty. Yeah.
And that's why we're not building on the coexisting trail now that the neighbors have made. We're going to let that kind of resume and kind of regrow itself.
Gotcha.
Does anybody remember, for the entrance, there's that berm, and there's a big tree to the left, from like the photo we just saw.
Yes.
But I think, if I remember correctly, you go up it and then down a little bit. Is it possible to maybe shave some of that
roots are
berm
probably
out
right
a little
there.
bit, so you have fewer steps, so it just sort of goes up to a level?
I feel like that'd be more invasive doing that, don't you think? Like,
Is that more
Yeah.
invasive?
I don't know, because now you're cut, like,
I mean,
what's
I would do no
underneath
steps,
that?
but,
It could be like the root, like Allison
There
said,
are
maybe the
roots.
root
Yeah,
system
okay,
right
that's what I
there.
thought, but I was
But it's a good thought.
told to ask.
Yeah, I think
Then
that's
it
a good
starts
thought.
eroding.
On the way down from that, there are lots of roots because there are trees
Okay.
connecting to each other.
Okay.
That's what that.
Yeah, and that area from I'm assuming it's gonna be paved, but, or maybe not, but up until where your steps are is already pretty disturbed anyways. I feel like maybe putting in those steps is better, yeah.
And along the path, there's barbed wire. Like
Oh, yeah, farther down.
Further
right.
down, there's a long barbed wire, and that's why I chose that place because there's no barbed wire. And if I was going to cross, there's just wetlands all on that side.
Yeah. Okay, someone wanna make a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second? Second? Discussion? Ready for a vote? All in favor?
Brian, you get
Brian, you're voting?
You get the vote.
Voting.
Sorry.
Does he wanna vote
Sorry,
or not?
Barbara's recusing herself.
Oh, I'm sorry,
You're
I
also
didn't catch
voting.
that.
You're also voting.
Yes.
Sorry, I should have said
I
that.
could
ahead of time.
recuse myself.
Okay. So all in favor, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you
You're
for
all
your
set.
time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good luck.
Good luck.
Sorry, I just should have.
You should advertise his trash cleaning days.
Oh,
You might
yeah.
get, more in the neighborhood even, you might get some people.
Yeah. All right. Other business, non-public meeting date.
Okay. So I know last time and the time before we talked about setting up a date after we had that work session with the planning board. So now we're sort of shifting focus for the time being to doing another non-public session about potential new conservation properties to look at. So we were thinking try to get that in sooner rather than later. And Peter and I just picked a preliminary date, which is the date we already have reserved for backup meetings, which would be next month, the Wednesday after our meeting, which would be October 18th. And that would be 3:30 p.m., the normal meeting time in conference room A.
So October 18th?
Right. But if that isn't a date that works for a lot of people, then we could do another doodle poll. I think we just thought you might be tired of doodle polls for the time being.
I love doodle polls.
But if that's preferred,
I don't
then
know.
if that date doesn't work, then that's okay. It's good. And we were talking a little bit this morning in our pre-meeting about potentially having someone come in to talk more about the specifics of, best methods for conserving land and the best ways to go about it. And I know the subject of Dover was brought up because they have an open space committee that's been doing a lot of work buying conservation land. So if we're able to, we might try to get someone from their committee to come and, talk with us or give us a brief presentation.
I have my notes from the meeting this morning.
Yeah, and they had a great meeting today at noon. I know Allison saw it, and I think Barbara was on
Yeah.
there. But it was really informative about what they're doing, so that would be really nice to have them talk to us. But if that date doesn't work for everybody, then we can find another one. Just let us know when you have a chance to look at your calendars.
So who doesn't need?
TDR, transfer of development rights, is what they were talking about this morning, which is another way to get land conservation, either money or into conservation.
What were you saying, Stuart?
Talking about the 18th, who does it not work for?
Who does it not work for? Does anyone?
It's like a Wednesday
Does
at
everyone
3:30.
know, or they need to look at their calendars? It works. I think it works. Sounds like it works for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, then we can schedule that for now. And that'll be in conference room A, not here.
I have an old
So
school
we can do
calendar,
it
so
sort
I
of
can't
more
tell.
privately, and it won't be broadcast.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great.
Can I ask a question about that?
You're also on after with your discussion, whatever you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, no, just about this,
Yeah.
the meeting.
Yeah.
For like any future land conservation, is the idea that it would be like Portsmouth-owned land? Like, would there be a land trust involved? I guess I'm just wondering if there's anyone else to
bring
invite
in.
from that perspective.
Maybe we can bring someone from SELT. I know they really want to do a lot more outreach with municipalities, from what I've heard. So maybe we can bring someone from them.
Yeah, they have a new land agent, Lori Summers, who, I think she probably would
Yeah.
come if we want. I don't know if there's different strategies, right, in terms of who owns and kind of monitors the easement, but land trust can be super helpful in that respect.
Yeah, land trust can be really informative. The problem, too, is though we don't have sizes that they're interested in.
Okay, yeah.
But they can be really helpful otherwise, information, and maybe there would be some.
That's a good point.
Well, I think that Peter had spoken to, I'm not sure who Peter spoke with, but we were looking at like important lands for protecting our water bodies. So was there conservation that could be done upstream that would then drain into that water body? And so a couple of those were identified. I can't remember, Peter, who it was that you had met with?
Get up, Allison.
I don't know if it was somebody from CAW or someplace else that, someone that you had met with, where you discussed the fact that there was, they were looking to protect actually land that drained into a water body, like protecting Sagamore Creek,
Like a watershed protection
the
plan?
watershed protection. You don't remember who
I
it
don't-
was you spoke to? Peter, you're younger
Well,
than I am.
I don't know what you're referring to, if it was a specific property or more of a planning approach.
I thought that it was a specific property, but there may have been others as well, that we were talking about the children's home
Oh,
because of the drainage that comes off that piece of property into Sagamore Creek.
yeah, there was a couple properties that come down into Sagamore Creek. One of them, well, we probably shouldn't name them, but one of them was along sort of like Banfield Road, but kind of landlocked. They didn't have access to the road. And then that was probably the most likely one because it wasn't really developable easily. But that, that's the approach we've taken in the past, has been to just look at what's out there and available in the city. But in talking today, it seemed like it might make sense to talk to other communities that have done this. Land trusts are a little different because they have a different sort of way they go about doing it. And they have bigger parcels usually, and they might have more money sometimes. But other communities, I think one of the things that we lack is an actual committee that focuses on this full time. We're trying to piecemeal it in as a side thing, and I'm not suggesting we need a new committee because there's not a lot of people trying to sell their property, like some communities where there's a lot of people trying to sell it, so they have enough support for the committee to do the work. But I think getting a presentation from one of those communities would be helpful, because then you'd get a sense of how they do it in those communities that have more of a process with a more active volunteer committee. But at the same time, even just looking at the properties we started to look at before and revisiting it, maybe after hearing from people, we'll have some ideas on how we want to go about taking the next step. We have some funds, we put aside some funds, there'll probably be more funds identified in the CIP again, or at least pushed for.
Don't we have more funds coming in 2024?
We got the ones from 2024, but the 2025, the 2030 CIP, I think also identifies funds. And then I think there's a gap of a year or two and then add some more. So the idea is to keep money going in, but
Right. But no sense in letting it go in and just letting it sit there.
we need to find some projects, yeah. So the thought was, rather than just make a list of projects and start like we did before, see what they do in other communities, see if they give us any kind of ideas that we want to follow, and then continue forward. And I think it almost has to be sort of a regular group that does it. I think if we did that kind of meeting, we had talked about a non-public, but I don't know that it wouldn't need to be non-public unless we're going to talk about specific properties.
Yep.
So we can talk about that when we plan the meeting. But
Thank you.
yeah,
Well, I think that there are quite a few members that weren't here when we originally looked at the properties, and so I think that it would be helpful to have this next meeting review what our thinking was and the fact that we had reached out to certain people that own the property, or we had gone out and evaluated the property on foot, looked at the lands to see what we thought might be valuable for us to try to protect. So I think that would be useful to those of you that haven't been here for a very long time. Do you all have copies of the Pula study? Because we're looking at like interconnecting properties as well. So like if there's a piece of property that is vacant and next to a Pula property, so that would potentially make a much larger area that we could protect, that's something that we consider as well. And that's actually how we picked the properties that we were looking at originally.
All right, Len, you're on.
Oh,
I wrote you and asked you to send me how to register.
okay. Sorry, I didn't see that. Yeah, I had 3 little pitches I want, and I put it all in an email too, so I'll just go through it really quickly. One is just an invitation to this discussion group that Barbara and I both participate in. It's called the Coastal Conservation Roundtable, and it's been going for, I don't know, 8 years or something, but it's kind of representatives from the different conservation commissions in the Seacoast area. Initially, it had been sort of like one rep from each conservation commission, and now that it's virtual, the idea is that we could, open that up to a larger group of people. So you're welcome to just like pop in and see if it's of interest. This next one has a focus specifically on flood disclosures, like how to ensure that, as a property is being bought or sold, owners are kind of informed. Which has a lot of relevance, I think, to also the issue that we care about around wetland status. So that might be of interest. That's one pitch. Any questions about the roundtable group?
I noticed that, was that the one that there were realtors involved as well?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a realtor who's coming. She's great. She's like, I just had like a little pre-meeting with her. She has a lot to say, and I think she could be a real ally for like trying to spark a little bit of change among the industry. Although she's not a big fan of the legislative approach that's going to be part of the discussion. But so it'll be good. It's a very like kind of informal. There'll be some good back and forth, and it's not like a formal instructional thing. It's much more of just a discussion group.
I have one question on that. Being virtual meetings, do you know if those are recorded and posted anywhere so you watch them at a later date, or is it no?
No, they do sometimes get recorded just for note taking, but I think because we really want it to be like a very candid discussion, sometimes it's a little, people just share whatever they're struggling with. No, it's not. It doesn't get posted.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering about the quorum thing.
Oh, geez.
I'm so sorry to bring it up.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
That's a good issue.
But if we go back on it, we're gonna.
Okay.
I hate bringing it up.
We can't just be individuals.
Sorry? I mean,
We can't just be individuals participating.
what if we don't even talk?
What if we all like show up at a
What if we're just watching?
conference together, like, or it's.
And maybe there won't be that many people going anyway, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I don't know a good way around that, unfortunately.
If you're not deciding specific,
Maybe if you change your Zoom name and have a black screen.
It's not recorded.
Right. Yeah.
All right, what's pitch number 2?
Oh, okay. The other 2 were just kind of some outreach opportunities, just folks looking for kind of a partner within Portsmouth, and one is around this pollinator pathways concept. It's a group, it's like a national group. There's a Connecticut group, there's a New Hampshire group, and the one in New Hampshire is based out of the Kingston Conservation Commission. I happened to just meet them at an event, and they were like, "Oh, you're from Portsmouth? Would you want to like?" And I was like, and I know some of you are maybe much more sort of well versed in the gardening world, and maybe have more personal interest in that topic. But I think the offer is, they'd be willing to kind of come and do a little pitch for us here, and then they're kind of looking for like a partner. And for Portsmouth to be named as a partner, it's essentially just having a liaison, and then an interest in hosting like one event a year. And you can imagine some fun things like, maybe in partnership with the library is what I was kind of had the image I had in my head, so that we didn't have to carry the brunt of the, hosting and promotion and that kind of stuff.
I'd love to have a presentation. In fact, I think it was the Durham Conservation Commission that I had written over a year ago, because they had, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but they had someone that is very big on, these are the pollinating plants that you want to encourage these types of insects, and how to help the insects that are beneficial in your yard. And I can probably look up his name, but I actually attended that meeting, and it was wonderful having this person that was so knowledgeable. I think he's a professor at Delaware University, maybe, or maybe a retired professor, but at any rate, I'd be really interested in having Kingston come out and talk to us about it.
Okay.
At one of our
Do you feel like we could
meetings.
dedicate that kind of time in one of our meetings? We don't do a lot of presentations.
I think it depends on what
Yeah.
our load is.
I know, and it's hard to know, right,
Yeah.
until it's like a week ahead. Okay, well, maybe we can like
talk about it.
strategize
Yeah.
about that. Yeah. And then the final one was also sort of an offer to do some sort of a green lawn care clinic. Some folks at UNH Extension are kind of sort of piloting some new methods to kind of promote more sustainable, lawn care practices. I think it's kind of
If they were promoting no grass lawns.
Right, yeah.
That would be really good. I mean, you know, let the clover grow kind of
Right,
thing.
yep. I
Talk
can-
about pollinators, grass is dead zone.
Yeah.
Have you seen it, Lynn?
No, have you?
Because we used to do it, so I don't know
Okay.
how much it's changed, but
Yeah.
it was kind of about that. I mean, that was sort of the first step, was reducing the size of your lawn and letting it grow long and all that.
That would be
And then,
nice.
So they used to talk about that. I'm guessing they still do. It's
Does it make
expensive.
sense to have it more in the spring?
Yeah.
Because people, if you do it now, people are just going to forget it, even if they're interested.
Yeah, although this is the best time to think about maintaining your lawn, too.
Yeah, I really hate the commercials that come on this time of year, though. All these things that you have to do to your lawn, you know, and it's all really bad stuff, so.
But we could start planning now for a spring event. You know, it doesn't hurt to get on calendars and things.
Yeah, and then, so that made me look up
Yeah.
Ted's NOFA thing that
Right.
was scheduled for October, the end of October,
Yeah.
and it's been canceled or postponed or whatever. So, so this would be great if it doesn't happen in the if that doesn't happen in the spring. This would be.
So we do ask a little bit more about whether we like the messaging around it, and then, yeah, consider.
That'd be great.
Okay, sounds good. Could be a fun little, like, if we did the two of those, you could see them going together as like a little series that we do with the library or something.
Yeah, I was thinking of the library. 'cause
Right?
They do a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and
That's-
they've got-
But I was like, oh, I don't want to foist another thing on the library, you know? But I think.
Well,
they-
Jessica would know better than us, but like, I think they
like to
I think they
partner
welcome
to do-
it.
that's what I
Yeah.
thought, yeah.
Especially if it's a city-sponsored sort of
Yeah.
event.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have any other business? Okay, meeting adjourned.